You know what I mean? But yeah, so I feel like by the time they did the For the People album, they were trying to experiment more, because I was kind of setting the tone for that. Even though, like, as far as the Beat Miners camp, they didn't want to go that route, per se,
Right,
musically.
right, right. I remember that time like it was yesterday.
Well, I'm glad as a listener you remember and you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Like you said, you also worked on, everybody's pretty much sophomore project,
mhm.
Warzone,
Yeah,
Buckshot solo album, Smith
yeah,
Wesson, as well as OGC. What do you remember
yeah.
most about that time from going to their debut to the sophomore? What was the chemistry like going into their sophomore
Good
albums?
question. And you know what's so funny? I want to commend you. I just got to put this on record. Nobody who ever interviewed really asked me about the work I did with Duck Down. Extensively asked me about it. They may
Right,
talk about certain records they know, and that's it. You know what
right,
I'm saying? But to answer that question, by the time this was like 97, 98,
right,
as you saw, as I explained earlier, I was trying to grow creatively and I was trying to be competitive to whatever was out in the market. So like, look, you doing this, I can do that. You know what I mean? That was just in me. You know what I'm saying? And arguably, within the Beat Miners camp, they wanted to stick with a specific sound and be consistent with that. And I get it, but to each his own. Like, I like to be a chameleon. I like to make music in a way that you don't always know it's me, but it's just dope
right.
until you read credits. I wanted to diversify myself creatively, and I think that became a challenge for me as far as working with the whole boot camp beat mining situation. And I accept that. And then so by that time, around '98, I did a few records on the Cocoa Brothers Rude Awakening album. I did something on the Empire Strikes Back OGC album. I don't think I did anything on the second Helter Skelter album. That was the album where they had the sample they did from the Tribe record, the
Right.
remember? Yeah.
I ain't
It-
having
it-
that.
yeah, yeah. They were still going in though, but I don't think I produced anything to my recollection on that album. And then I do remember one time I was riding through Brooklyn with my father, who doesn't even live in New York. He lives in Virginia. And he drove up, and I was just driving around the city, and I cut through East New York, and I'm driving, and I just ran into Ruck on the street, like at a red light. He's like, yo, I want to fuck with that such and such beat you gave me. And he's saying this to me on the street corner, and I'm in the car with my father. So I'm like, oh, no doubt. And I'm looking at my father like, oh my God. But Ruck was Ruck. He didn't care who he talking to, where he was. He gonna say what he got to say to you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I remember that. But like that tail end of like the times that I was working heavily with Duck Down, I did, like I said, the Empire Strikes Back album. I did uh what was the other, the I forgot the name of the album where they had the basketball jerseys on. Do you
Oh,
remember? Chosen something?
yeah, 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 yeah. Yep,
Chosen Few or something like that.
yep.
I worked on that album, and I think that was it. After Cocoa Brothers, Empire Strikes Back, For the People, and The Chosen Few, I think that was like the tail end of my working with Duck Down.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have any recollection of the Tupac situation where he came over with the idea for One Nation and recruited,
What's so amazing is when all of that was going on, and I'm talking about, the dissension between Biggie and Boot Camp and the alliance with Tupac. And I don't know what everybody's intentions was because I wasn't around. Like I said, that was like the tail end of when I was working with them, directly, but I was hearing about it. I knew about it. I knew Buck was working with it was mostly Buck, Tech, and Steel out of the boot camp that built the relationship with Tupac and kind of spearheaded that whole agenda as far as the One Nation project and working with him and collaborating with the Outlaws and making an album. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, Pac passed away by '96, so it got to fruition. I know it was lingering even after he passed in terms of the masters and the songs, and they was trying to figure out what to do, and Outlaws are trying to figure out what to do. So I think him not being there, taking the lead on the creative direction as well as the business, it kind of left everything in the wind.
right. What was
Because
your role on the High School High soundtrack?
actually shot the artifacts, you know what I mean? Shot the Elder Sensei. I just talked to him not too long ago. Reason being, I'm actually collecting with my attorney on back royalties. That's a whole nother conversation. But shout out to Artifacts, man, and rest in peace to Tame One. I worked on the Ultimate, which was one of the singles off of that first album, That's Them, when they were signed to Big Beat Atlantic. Shout out to the A&R, Rob Tulo, aka Reef. And they actually licensed my song on the High School High soundtrack, which ended up becoming a gold record. And that's kind of why I'm backlogging now, because I know that's a gold record, and I never got any album royalties from that record. You know
Wow.
what I mean? So that's business 101. But as far as the music, we did that record, and I actually built a relationship with Artifacts thanks to producer from Brooklyn, Sean J. Period.
Yeah.
While I was doing the Helter Skelter album, Sean J. Period and I had built a relationship. He was working heavily for Artifacts. So was Buck Wild from DITC, but I met Artifacts through Sean J. Period. So back in those days where producers were more showed more camaraderie, Sean J. was like, "Yo, play some beats for Artifacts." I did, and that was the result of it. And I said to him, "Yo, Sean, play some beats for Helter Skelter," and that's how he got on the Helter Skelter album. You know what I'm saying? If you look on the credits, he did. I forgot the name of the songs, but if you look on the album credits, he made it on that album because he produced something for them too.
Right.
But yeah, I did like two, I think either two or three songs on that first Artifacts album, but the most notable was the Ultimate.
The second Artifacts album.
Yeah, yeah.
It was,
Was that them the second album or the first
yes.
album?
Between a Rock and a Hard Place was the first one.
First album, right.
Just
Right.
so the viewers.
So the Rock and the Hard Place album, it had the wrong side of the tracks and
Right.
a lot of stuff produced by Buck Wild, right?
Come on with the come on.
Right.
Yep.
So the That's Them album was their second album. Okay.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I asked you that earlier question about Tupac because I was wondering, is that the way that you and Fatal Husein had linked up?
Actually, I'm glad you asked because the manager of Artifacts was managing Fatal Husein. So that's how I linked up with him because Fatal Husein was from Jersey.
Right.
Remember, a lot of the outlaws was from Jersey that Pac was rocking with. So the guy who was managing Fatal Husein, may he rest in peace as well. He saw what I was doing with Artifacts, and he was like, "Yo, I'm working with this cat Fatal Husein." Now, mind you, when he introduced me to Fatal, I didn't know the whole Outlaws affiliation. I found out about that later as I worked on the music, and we actually recorded in the same studio in Manhattan that I was doing Artifacts. So Fatal was in New York, and we went and did the stuff. I think there's one song called Outlaws featuring the Mac Mall, Artist Miley. And, I had a lot of headaches with that record, not from the creative side, but the business side. I'll explain. I sampled the Isaac Hayes record, real dope sample, guitar, fire. So the original beat was crazy. Like the way I put the beat together, they were excited about the song, and I was excited about the song. But then when we turned it in, they said they didn't have a budget to clear Isaac Hayes at that time. Can I replay it? So I had to do 2 studio sessions just to go in there, bring in a live guitar, try to replay it. But as you know, sometimes certain samples, it's not just about the samples, but the feel of the music. Even if you have an organic instrumentation of that, you may not get the same feel. So that was a learning lesson for me, because even though I was transitioning into more organic instrumentation, it's about how you do it,
Right.
And there's 2 versions that circulated. The one that I did originally, I think it was removed from the album, and the version that was on the actual album was the replay. But the other version that I did originally circulated somewhere, and I think it's still around on the internet somewhere now.
Right.
And I actually got to hang out with Fatal before he passed away out in LA. We ran into each other at like Roscoe's one day, and we were just kicking it. You know what I mean? And I think probably within another year or so after that is when he got to his car accident. You know what I mean? So, rest in peace, Fatal Husein.
Absolutely. Before we go any further, at this point, can you tell me, was it easier to clear samples when you first got into the business, or did it?
Good question. Okay, so my career started really happening around 96. I came in at 95, but my name, like how you got it right here, and if somebody will know who I am, 96, right? So between 96 going into like 98, 99 into 2000 is when the sample clearance issue started getting more and more of a struggle because the music business was shifting. More and more people were making a lot of money off samples like Puff and everybody
Hmm.
that you could name. There was a time in the 80s into the early 90s, people sampled away and nobody cared. They didn't respect the music enough and the culture enough to say, okay, we have value with what we're doing musically. We need to clear this because these other artists who own the rights to these songs or whatever the case may be, especially if it's a familiar record where that estate exists still, need to clear it. A lot of times hip hop did sample rare records and records that probably didn't do well in the market when they first came out. So those songs aren't properly administrated. You know what I mean? So with that being said, people used to get away with murder sampling. But when there was more money being made, that's when the major corporations started paying more attention. They literally made companies just for sample clearances. Like DMG, Deborah Manis Gardner, and there's a couple others out. And now, any publishing situation that you have, you're dealing with publishing administrators. They want to know exactly what you're doing as a composer to avoid problems later, especially if they give you any upfront money as a publishing deal.
Right.
But yeah, it's definitely harder. Like I think probably one of the things that led to the separation of myself from the B miners. It wasn't the only thing, but one of the things that led to it was all the issues we had making that album. Clearances, money that was spent on samples, and then you couldn't put them out. It was man, it was a lot behind the scenes making that album. And I'm talking about the B miners album, Brace for Impact, that was on Raucous Records. Yeah, because I know you didn't ask about it yet, but I'm just tying it all together.